But in dealing with organizations, there's other things that you can do to help people. And I will tell you an example of this. It's about a time when someone felt disrespected at work. Anyone ever felt disrespected at work or unloved at home? Just want to make sure I got the right audience. And I wonder what the chances are that there might have been a misunderstanding in that moment. I mean, let's just ask this question. There's no correct answer. Just see what you think. What % of the conflict, frustrations, disagreements, arguments we have with others do you think might be because of a misunderstanding? Just get a number in your mind. Okay, how many of you think 50% or more? Okay, well, anybody think 75% or more? Anybody think 90% or more? So the majority believe the majority is because of a misunderstanding. I agree with that. But in the middle of the argument, we don't remember that. You know? So now what % of the arguments that are because of a misunderstanding, whatever you consider that to be, what % of them are because you misunderstand? How many of you are thinking of a smaller number? But didn't you come up with some number? See, it's just because you're willing to accept some responsibility for that now. But in the middle of an argument, what do you believe about your point of view? What % of the time? 100% of the time. And when you know you're right, what do you know about them? They're wrong. And when you know you're right and you know they're wrong, what's your job? Try to convince them that they're wrong. We're just trying to help them out. We don't want them to go down the wrong path. And what % of the time when we know we're right and we know they're wrong, we try to convince them that they're wrong, what % of the time are they grateful? But what % of the time do we do it? All the time. I was facilitating a leadership retreat for a government agency, and I knew that there were some conflicts because I'd been interviewing people and talking with them before this retreat. And in working with one of the managers, I had done some of the training about the stress and, you know, how sometimes things happen and people get upset and we take it personally, and how to, you know, breathe and relax and reassure yourself enough to be able to hear that when someone's angry, you need to know two things about it. One, it's important to them. Otherwise, they wouldn't be angry. That's a measure of importance. The other thing you need to know is they don't think you want to hear what they have to say. If they thought you wanted to hear what they had to say, they wouldn't have to get angry to tell you. They expect resistance, and they're trying to put out effort to get through your resistance. And if you get upset, if you take it personally, if you get angry back, guess what they're going to think? You didn't want to hear. So in working with them, I knew that there was an explosion coming, and it happened. And the superintendent exploded on the director about how hurt and angry he was that the director didn't trust him, didn't value him, and he'd been here for 30 years, and he still didn't feel respected. The director had learned to breathe and to also do some communication skills, because haven't you noticed in the middle of a conflict how we don't remember any communication skill? That emotional wave that hits us. So the stress stuff is really good for that. Breathe, relax, reassure yourself, think positive. Ask some questions, just like, oh, what happened? What is it you want me to know? Is there anything else? So he focused on listening, and the supervisor told a story about where he was working, and the director came down and was watching him work. This had never happened before. And he was taking notes. And then he left. And obviously, he didn't trust him. This is evidence. Now, did the supervisor keep this disrespectful behavior to himself? No, he told other supervisors about it. And this went on for 3 years, that they were in this struggle, and the director was confused about what was happening, didn't know how to handle it, didn't know what was going on. So now he's finding out. And after he went through the process and he said, do I understand? And the supervisor said, yes, you're listening, you're understanding, okay. Then he said, well, I agree that that's exactly what happened. I did come down. I did watch what you were doing. I had not done that before. And I left without saying anything. But there's something else. There's some information you might not have that might make a difference in how you saw what I did. I've always been signing off on the materials that you request without really knowing what's going on sometimes. And I realized that, and I thought, gee, I just need to know what you're doing. And I came down to watch him. Boy, you were doing such a good job. I just didn't think I had to say anything. And I realize now the problem that caused. And I apologize that I didn't say anything so that you would know then how much I value what you do. Now, I wonder how often in all of our lives we experience stress over years because someone said something or didn't, and we made a judgment about what that meant, and we used the intensity of our emotion as evidence of the righteousness of our thinking. The more upset I am, the more right I think I am, and others had better know it. But I'd like you to learn to look at it differently. The more intense our emotion, maybe the more off our thinking is. That we have an intense emotion is evidence that we have a particular thought. We wouldn't have the emotion without the thought, unless you have some chemical or neurological damage. But it doesn't mean that the thought is accurate. And so when your emotion gets into the red, I want you to start breathing and relaxing and reassuring yourself, thinking positive, and asking some good questions that will move you through that.